We can start, yeah. So nobody's outside, some people. So while we are maybe waiting for a minute, anybody has questions? Wealth, yeah. So that is like a economic problem, right? Little bit, and it is a social problem. It is a cultural problem. So then, what is the taxation in the country, and how people pay taxes? Like especially in United States, you know, now people are saying is that we have to tax rich people more, and then poor people less. So that's like one way you do that. So there are many strategies how to change. So it is not an easy thing. You have to do a lot of things. You have to change a culture in this society. You have to change how people think, then how rich people think. So like one of the richest person in the world, you know who that person is? Bill Gates, right? So he just lives 2 miles away from where we live, and he has $80 billion, right? Yeah, in many countries, probably there may be 100 countries whose total output is less than. So then his main mission in life is to how to give it back to society. And he is the first person that will say that in the United States, we should have more taxes on the rich people so that we can have less burden on the poor people. But a country like India, you know that you have very deeper problems. People don't pay taxes even. I'm sorry?
But people pay taxes.
No. Only if you Google it, what percentage, I think many times people say that, but then you find the data, what percentage of Indians pay taxes? It will be only 5%. 95% of people in India, at least in the past, didn't pay taxes. So it is very easy. That's what happens in politics and emotional statement. So you can always make statement, this is what people do. But then what we are teaching to be rational and logical and science and collecting data. So that is the struggle that Modi is going through, how to make sure that all the vendors on the street and everybody is contributing. And very few people are contributing So then typically what will happen is it will create a lot of social problems. And then poor people will say, oh, we are not capable to pay taxes and we'll cheat. And you remember like last year how India struggled with the notion of black economy and demonetization and on and on. So it is one should never say that. First you have to look at the data and go to Modi or go to a taxation department in India, go to different websites, go to different universities where people are doing research and say how are people paying taxes. So then the system becomes very, very unfair. Anytime system is unfair, if poor people or middle class people can cheat, then rich people can figure out how to cheat. So it permeates a culture in society. So you have to start, yesterday I think there was a debate among students, say we cannot blame India. There is nothing like India or America or government, right? What is India? India is not a person. You people are India. So somebody says, oh, we shouldn't blame India, we should blame people. India is same as people. Government is same as all of you. Because some of you will become powerful people in India. Our hope is, anytime I teach students, our hope is that we are training, educating future leaders of society. So same people will become leaders in our society. So there's nothing like America. It is American people. It's American people. So then what you say people do is a reflection on India. What people do in America is a reflection on America. You cannot blame India for anything because India is people, right? Makes sense? What is your government? It is not a computer or it is not a government, is people like you. And those people make decisions every day and on and on. So they are just people. So that means we, at least in a democratic process system, we are the government. Make sense? There is no somebody else who is the government. We are the government. That's too hard statement. No? I think we are. We elect people. Yes, no? Yeah. And if I vote for somebody who's not qualified, who should we blame? Us, right? Because I cannot blame the person. I gave you power, right? And then I'm complaining, oh, you are abusing the power when I knew what you will do. So most important thing is you can change when we use the word system. System means is that what are the systems and procedures, how people are elected and how people are selected, how people make decisions on a day-to-day basis about taxation. So why will people not pay taxes and they'll cheat? India is a big cash economy, right? So now it will take maybe 20 years to become digital economy. So far, most of the people, government has no idea how much money people have, right? Then they cannot bill you. So like in United States, we have little better system, not that we have very good systems. As soon as you're born, you have a social security number. So that means somebody knows whether you're paying taxes or not. Every person has an account with the system. I'm using the word system because system reflects our whole society. So then that's a very, very different model than you can see that you have in India. So there will always be a lot of issues with the rich people able to pay bribes, right? And then do certain things that you cannot do. So then, of course, they can keep on accumulating more and more wealth, right? So you have to break that cycle. So if you go back 1,000 years or 2,000 years, in India and many other countries, it is kings in a country, right? Or in a state. Then who has the money? King. And everybody in the village are just working for the king. All these people in the military are working for the king. And one person has 99% of the wealth, and everybody else has 1% of the wealth. So then slowly we said, this is very bad. So now we have eliminated almost everywhere in the world. Maybe there are a couple of countries where there is a king, but that king is a figurehead. Not that king collects taxes from poor people. So you can see people realize that's a very bad system. And America, United States fought against the notion of king, like against British rule, British impact. So the whole idea was a king is a bad concept, right? Why should one person take the money and other people serve this one person? So now the new thing is we got rid of one problem, but still a lot of rich people have so much power. Yes, no. They can have impact on who is elected and who is selected. So that is so then you have to learn how to break the system, how political system, social system, educational system, cultural systems, a lot of things have to be done. And it is not something you can fix one thing and then suddenly problems will disappear. You have to change a lot of things simultaneously. You have to change how people view a lot of things in society. So it is not one solution. If there was one simple answer to your question, Modi will be very happy. He'll give me $1 million to give him that answer, and he can change India, right? But it's not that thing. But it takes time, and the question is, what is a... Yeah, direction, like we're talking today. First, even you can see the problem is people don't even recognize the problem. People are so irrational. You tell them something, and they say that doesn't exist in India. So they don't even recognize the problem. How can't you correct something that you even refuse to admit? Say it again. No, 10% of the people probably have 99% of the wealth in India, not 90%. 10% is very large, 10% in India is 130 million people, and that's a big number, right? So if you look at our people like you, most of you will be in the 10%. Yes, no? No, first answer my question. Most of you will be in the 10%. You'll be in the top 1%, most of you. No, so you see, that again is a irrational statement. If you look at logically, all of you are getting MTech and getting BTech, and you'll be making maybe 50,000 every month or 1 lakh every month. All you have to do is look at 80% of the people who are not even able to make 1,000 rupees a day. So you are very irrational. You are not looking at numbers. That's the problem. A lot of time, just like he right away said, oh, people pay taxes in India. I said, what does it mean? If 5% people pay taxes, can I say people pay taxes? If you said 95% pay taxes, I could accept that statement, right? So you have to be very careful. Most of you are not getting educated because you don't look at numbers. You just come up, and same thing happens. Modi can get away with a lot of statements because nobody knows the numbers, right? So he could say, I did this and this. Then how do ordinary people in a village know he did that? How will people in a village know he did that? He can make any statement and get away with it, right? And that's what people in India or many countries, politicians have been doing. Because ordinary people have no clue. They have no numbers. Anytime I ask you a question about India, most of you have no idea. Yesterday we talked about agriculture, right? And I said, oh, 100 years ago in America, like 60% population worked in agriculture. And today it is 3%. So I asked a question, what percentage of Indians are in agriculture? Nobody knew. And then, see, if society is not educated, this is not job of government to educate you. Whose job it is to educate you? Your job. All you have to do is, now you can see you are benefiting from America, the technology of internet. All you have to do is, I asked that question, I said go home and find out. All you have to do is Google it, and it will tell you how many Indians are in agriculture, right? But people are not doing that. Why is that? Every time I ask a question, people have no answer. And their answer, if they have an answer, it is so irrational answer. It has nothing to do with reality. I've been a little bit too harsh on you, so you can enjoy candy. How about that? So you can take one, but you have to open it. So there is a seal here. See if you can open it.
Yes.
And then you can take one and pass it back. So I'm sorry I made very strong statements. No?
Sir, is that there is one more difference. The uneven population density in different parts of India. So if you will go to some poor states, for example, Odisha, Bihar, Jharkhand, UP, the population density is very high and education level is very low. So, and when we sum up for the whole India,
you can just leave it, you can pass it back. Yeah. You can take one and pass it to your friend, so you can pass it there. Yeah. No, of course, every state is different, every region is different, every city is different. But you have to know what India is. And when I said you are in the 10%, and most of you said, no. And you may be better than 10%. So all you have to do is, in India, go to some website and say, what is the monthly salary of top 10%? And you'll find you are there. Or what is the net worth of top 1%? And you can find those numbers so easily. So that means if you have misconceptions, that is a tremendous problem. You cannot change country where people have illusions. And because, now we are teaching science. So science means is that it is based on hard numbers. It is not based on my belief or, anything else. It is based on actual numbers. I cannot just give you my idea, this is how an electron works. It has to be something that anyone in the world can study the electron and study its property and get the same answer. So if nothing else, today you should go back home and Google these things. The benefit from American system of this new internet, and there's a tremendous database, right, in India too. Maybe a lot of questions, they won't have an answer, right? So maybe there's not enough database. But most of these questions, who's in the top 10%, who's in the bottom 5%, you can get all of that statistic. Just like we talked about how many people die. So you'll find so many different statistics, and you can look at where is India compared to every other country. So it will give you the answer. And you say, why we say India is the worst country. So people could say, oh, India is very safe, but then you're not looking at the numbers and then making a statement. So first thing you do is, anytime you have a idea, a question, do some basic research. You just go to different websites, go to the library and study those things. You still don't believe me that you will be in the top 10% in India? How many people in India have a monthly salary of 1 lakh rupees? Million, 10 million, 100 million? You Googled it? No, okay. Okay, I thought you Googled it.
61.5% are involved in agriculture.
61%. So you can see that that's very high compared to United States, that is 3%. And the reason we are 3% is because we applied the concept of design of experiment. So that means we don't have to grow the food and then complain, oh, it is bad season, it didn't rain, on and on. As a species, our productivity through mechanization, through fertilizer, and on is enormous. So 60% is what America was 100 years ago, right? So then those people are at the mercy of the environment a lot more, right? If you have bad weather or bad rains, then a lot of people will suffer, right? So you could always complain some higher force for your misery. But today idea is in this world we have so much knowledge that I don't have to appeal to higher force to make me live properly. So, that is the whole idea of systems thinking. So you look at a whole system and then learn how to change it. So if you don't change the system, your problems will always be there. So I won't use the India as an example, like I go all over the world. So if, for example, I go to Thailand, so I went 20 years ago, so they say, oh, our prime minister is very corrupt and there's so much corruption, so they say we should get rid of the person. I said that makes sense. If somebody is bad, you should get rid of. So I go back after 3 years. They say we should change it. So they are always changing the person, but not changing the system. How to elect a prime minister, what their constitution is. So this way, million years from today, they will say, our prime minister is very corrupt, we should get rid of this person. And everybody is chaotic, there is chaos, and everybody is struggling, and nobody trusts anybody. So simple wisdom is, you cannot change the output unless you change the system. And if that doesn't make sense to you, I don't know what will make sense. Why you think many Indians don't understand that or believe in it? Why don't people believe in this simple idea that you have to change the system to change the output?
We believe in this, sir, but...
You don't believe, otherwise you will execute it if you believe in it.
I don't know how to change the system.
All you have to do is read something on Google and it will tell you how to change the device. If I change anything, even battery, I'm changing the device, right? So that is always there. If every person changes, remember our assumption was India is nothing but people. America is people. There is no building that is India, right? So that is people. So it is, to me, it's so simple. But how you could say, you don't know.
I just want to ask you one thing. Which factors do you consider that India is the worst country? How can we say that India is the worst country?
No, we don't say.
There must be some parameters on basis of which the people from America, I have seen so much of videos, if you will ask the people from America, that what you don't know about the America, so they will say that slumdog millionaire. They only know such things. So what are the criteria the Americans think India is the worst country?
I don't think, again, you can't say Americans think India is. So for every quality, we can find out what is the worst country. So like we gave example of traffic accidents.
Yes,
So then you can collect data in America, in Japan, in Africa, in South Africa, then in India. So you'll be at the bottom.
there must be some parameters.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is worst means is worst is relative. By definition, if you say best or worst, it is relative to some metric. So every metric you have to decide. Maybe some metric you are the best. So that's the idea. So we cannot make a generic state.
We are not worse, sir. We are populated.
No, wait a minute. Now again, that's a separate issue. New quality. So.
Some of the things we are one of the top countries in the world.
Sure. In a lot of things.
Software production.
A lot of,
and
yeah,
other
sure.
things we are providing world.
No. So nobody's debating you. So that is for every quality. Quality is a characteristic of the system, and then you have a metric. How you going to measure that quality? So you can develop a statistic where you are in the world. That's what we say.
Only if we will be able to know how bad we are and in which things, only then we can work, sir. We must be having clear objectives.
It's not question of objective. You have to know there are very standard qualities. So like we look at, like yesterday we talked about infant mortality. So we'll say, how many, what is the infant mortality? That means we say if 1,000 babies are born, how many will die in 1 month? So we can calculate that in India, we could calculate that in Africa, we could calculate that in Middle East, any country.
So this is the answer of the question what he is asking, that we are improving. We must first know the factors on behalf of which we can improve. We must be having a list.
You should make a list, yeah.
This is not the only thing we need.
Yeah.
We will have the list of what things we have to improve. We can be able to-
that list is available today. Yeah, all you have to do is
we must be aware of, na, sir.
Yeah, that is available. You go to United Nations and look at metrics for quality of life. All that information is there. Any question that you guys are asking me is there.
The answer of the person, sir, what I am saying, that we must know the bad things of India, and we just have
There's no, wait a minute.
and work on that.
Change your language. There's no notion of bad and good.
bad things,
There's no, again, don't use the word bad.
sir, which makes us at a very lower index.
Yeah, so you can calculate it.
If
Yeah.
we will get those things, we can work on them, and the system will be
Yeah,
better.
sure.
The definition of quality is different for the different individuals. In my opinion, the quality of life is maybe different than his opinion.
Sure.
Other opinion.
Sure.
The quality is satisfaction with the customer. Wants, then we deliver. How we define that this life is better? This is the good quality. One may be happy in less resources, and one may be unhappy with more resources. It depends upon individual to individual, the way he thinks, the mental level, we are better and how we are less better or good.
Yeah.
This is dependent only the
All on individual, very true.
So,
So,
basically, how can we judge our quality on the basis of aspect of Americans?
nobody's asking you to compare with, as a leader, you don't worry about standards. Indians don't need standards from Pakistan or
We
France.
set our own parameters
You have to set up your own. Yeah.
because we have different scenarios.
I'm sorry?
And sir, one concept is more I want to ask that why we are discussing that Thailand, Indian, American, why can't we discuss that with people of the earth? So if we have different systems, so everybody is doing its own system.
Sure, you can do that. You can do that.
And then everybody improves and the whole system improves. So we live on earth, there is whole number of universe, the number of branches are there. So can we improve our thinking that we are the whole earth, we are just beginning for all the people of the earth. Data for the earth, how many people are poor, well, so we can, the whole conflict is that we are assuming
We are parting ourselves as
different
country.
system from the other system.
Yeah, you could take the, yeah.
The common the understanding of the people may rise. If we are Indian, you say that we are Indians, we are Indians, so some are Americans, some are Thailands. People are, they are only in the mind that we are Indians or Americans.
So what are you saying? I think he's saying is that maybe the notion of a country is irrelevant, right? But today we have the notion of a country. So first you have to figure out how to get rid of countries.
Humanity is equal among all the countries.
Yeah, I understand. So just like in India, you have many states, right?
Just to state that
Then you have to get rid of all the states and say,
may we think today and the impact over the
yeah, sure. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah. So there's no argument with what you're saying. And there is no contradiction there. But there were a lot of contradiction with other statements that people made. Yeah.
But we should grab those statements which are better than the others so that to ourselves. So that
Definitely, yeah. So you decide what is important to you and then work on that. There is no inconsistency there. Nowhere did we teach you that you follow another model. Remember, we were doing the opposite. I was saying don't follow standards, rules, international guidelines, but you decide. That was day number 1. We talked about that. So there is no inconsistency there. There are a lot of other inconsistencies, but there is no inconsistency there. If you decide to do something, that is your freedom. And nobody in this world will oppose you. But you don't have the freedom to hurt, harm, injure other people. So then you have restrictions. So if you do bad things, then there are consequences.
we don't hurt our family because we think that they are ours. If we feel that all the people are ours, then why do we hurt them?
Sure. No, there's no inconsistency there. Yeah. So a lot of these concepts are consistent with lecture number 6. So in lecture number 6, we said there is no precise word. So then that's the idea of using fuzzy, and then what fuzzy means is that when I say, oh, I want to be humble. Now what does humble mean? Right? What's the metric for being humble? We don't have a metric, and it is just a word, and it is not very precise. It doesn't mean less than 3 is humble and more than 3 is not humble. You say, I love my family. What is love? What is love? So every person has a different definition, right? What you want to say? Or he wanted to say, what is love? To care about other people. And what does it mean to care? Huh? I'm sorry? Try to... Attraction towards others. Okay. Feelings. So you can see that simple word like love, hate, jealousy, humility, arrogance. These are all just words. And the way we behave is using these words, right? Ultimately, we don't do calculus the way we teach or integration in our brain, right? We're just using the words. So that's the idea that here we are using that as an example about reliability, but you can apply this idea to any decision-making process. So because things are not very, very precise. So that's what we're going to discuss. So it says that traditionally, like binary thinking has a lot of limitations. We talked briefly before too. Binary is the simplest form of measurement. You cannot say, I'm humble or I'm not humble, right? That's too simplistic, right? So there is a degree of humility. Make sense? So that's why binary is the simplest form, just like the word failure is the simplest form of measurement. Either it is failure or is it a success. So a lot of debate that we have is because, and debate is using words, and words by definition are not very precise. Words are not very precise. So love word can have different meaning to different people, right? Make sense? Everyone has different idea. What does it mean to love a person? Yes, no? You think everybody has the same idea of what love is? Because that is your own personal emotion, your upbringing, your culture, your perspective, or what it means to care for somebody else, if you want to use those words. So then the idea is that even in the engineering field, how can you change the field so that you can go from binary thinking to multi-state? And then multi-state means it is discrete, but then you can make it continuous. And then you can also make it a fuzzy. So here we use the word fuzzy sets and fuzzy thinking. So fuzzy, if you look in the dictionary, is a very bad word. It is the opposite of being science. In science, we teach people to be very precise, not fuzzy. I say measure something and I want to be very precise. But in real life, in decision making, our thought process is very, very fuzzy. Fuzzy means is that it is very gray, and it is not just number 3 or number 4 or number 5 or number 6. So that essentially is, and the person that developed the concept of fuzzy thinking, I mentioned that person's name yesterday. Who was that person? Remember yesterday's lecture, we talked about that person? Buddha, no. So most of you have internet access. You have your iPhone or whatever phone is. So you can then say fuzzy thinking, and it says who developed fuzzy thinking or fuzzy logic. And then the name of the person was Lofty, Lofti, Zadeh, Zadeh. Remember, yesterday I talked about that he was from Iran, and he was a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, and he died a couple weeks ago. Yeah, and he was 92 years old. So you can Google like Lofty Zadeh, and then you can get his picture. And then you could go to your library. So in your library they have a computer. Yes? So you could say how many journals are on fuzzy logic. So it will list all the journals on fuzzy logic. You could say in your own university, are there any professors who work on fuzzy logic? You'll be able to find them. So all this depends on you, not on anybody else. Most of you don't do that. Why? Because maybe you think it is not relevant. You are so preoccupied with day-to-day living. There are so many struggles that you have. And you said this is not the luxury. You could watch a movie or you could do something else. But doing this kind of intellectual curiosity is a luxury to many people, right? Because they are so preoccupied with their life. So then you have to figure out how to change that vicious cycle. You're able to find Zadeh? Yeah, see here. Yeah. So here he has a picture of that person. Yeah. Yeah. So you can see, idea is that learning means is if your professor, teacher mentions something, then you go home and then you study it, right? So like the difference between a good university, if you go to Harvard, like that typically is ranked number one in many ways, many metrics. Not that it is better than your university, but in so many metrics is number one. So there, when they recruit students, nobody has to teach the student. And many times even in my university, we never teach. Students have to learn themselves. So you can come to me and you say, I want to learn this. I'll say, why did you want to learn this? And all we can do is answer question with the question. And then you have to go and figure out why you want to learn something. And then do your homework. Then you come back, you say, how does this happen? And I say, why you want to do that? And then very soon you develop your own models. So that this process of learning and teaching was developed more than 2,000 years ago. Aristotle and so on, this was their way of teaching. They will never tell their disciple the answer. You can encourage the disciple to come up with an answer and their own answer. So that means when you come up with your own answer, you have to synthesize yourself rather than me giving you an answer. So that is consistent with your comments 10 minutes ago. Each one of you have to do your own synthesis. So you say you decide what is quality of life to you. You don't have to take anybody's metrics, right? So you could say, material goods are not important to me. I don't want a plasma TV or LCD TV. That's your choice. And then you figure out what will make you happy, right? Like we talked about job versus hobby, right? So you want to develop yourself so that you never focus on a job, but you focus on your intellectual curiosity and what makes you happy. So all of these things are consistent. So that's basically the whole idea. You can see a lot of these slides are saying the same thing. So everything is based on the customer, the user, and user's interpretation, and then doing the synthesis. So the basic idea is that anytime you have a system, we could say everybody is their own, then it is very hard to manage a system. What is the meaning of a system? There has to be a common objective to synthesize. Otherwise, it is not a system. So like in this class, let's say we have 40 students, and there is a focus for putting you together, and focus is to teach this thing. If he wanted to learn calculus and you wanted to learn literature, I couldn't do anything, right? See, anytime you have a system, his question is, what is the purpose of calling it a system? Then in a different context, everything has a different purpose. So same battery here has one purpose, same battery in something, other device has a very different purpose. So that's the idea. So India as a system has to decide what is their purpose. If that isn't there, and then if everybody in the society has a different purpose than what we call as a common purpose, then you'll have fighting all day. So there has to be the very fact, otherwise you leave India, you say, I don't believe in Indian purpose. You have to find a common purpose, yeah. Otherwise there is no reason to call it India, right? That's like philosophical statement. So you can't say this is India, or this is Africa, or this is China, or this is Pakistan. So you have to find, otherwise you cannot keep people together. Like if you have one company, there has to be a purpose. What does Hindustan Liver want to do? They want to make soaps and make money. So whatever, and then every person in the company has to work on how to make the best soap that everyone wants to buy, and then they can make money. So certainly you cannot go to Hindustan Lever and say, oh, we want to make computers, right? They say, no, that's not our purpose. We have nothing to do with computers, but we have been doing soaps for over 100 years, right? Hindustan Lever is one of the premium companies in India in terms of, you can say what's the metric for being premium, how much, profit they make, how they reward shareholders, how they reward their employees, how they help society. They make millions of people beautiful in some way or the other, right? So they have some common social impact. Then another company has to find their own purpose. So that's the idea. And there's no inconsistency there. So we can go through these fast. So we talked about reliability, maintainability. So a lot of the purposes, all these definitions, we say that they are not good because they are based on binary thinking. So they use the word failure, and that is binary thinking. And then we say how we can change that, how to go from binary to some other level of thinking. So it says that, just like you ask, how can we decrease the concentration of wealth? So we say, oh, there are a lot of barriers you have today. Then, so we say that there are a lot of barriers in the way we are living today. And unless you get rid of the barriers, so thinking in a simplistic fashion is a barrier. If all I do is think in good and bad, that is a barrier. Biggest harm is done to our society when you use the word good and bad, success and failure. You understand? So if I say, oh, he's a failure, how bad you'll feel, right? That's a very, very bad word. And nobody should tell him he's a failure, right? Yeah, that's a very bad word. I say he's a bad person. That's not a good thing to do. He looks ugly. No. You're married? No. What, 100 girls must be looking for you? No? He knows that, right? So we should, this is the weakness of the language. And it does a lot of damage to people. Because words have impact on people, right? If I tell you, oh, I do this to you, it has a tremendous impact to you because it affects your whole body, your brain, your emotions, all your, chemicals in your body. Everything is affected, hormones and blood chemistry. So everything is affected. So our society has evolved. That is the idea of maybe a culture that isn't very good. We're using the word good in a relative sense. That relies too much on these kind of words. And then people use it, and then they use these words to kind of artificially discriminate against people. They use them to discriminate. And that can have a very, very negative impact. Did you know when I was a student, I want to study engineering? Because in India there are so many people who want to study engineering. So they can come up with artificial rules. So they said, oh, I cannot go to engineering because I wear glasses. And nobody can tell them that that is not a good rule, right? I remember humiliation. I went once for interview after undergraduate degree. So they had like a big table and there are 12 people sitting. So I walk in. So I'm a little bit maybe 10 feet away. So the guy says, remove your glasses. I remove it. So he shows me pencil. He says, what color this pencil is? I say, I can't see. He says, you can go. So if there is a society that can do that, right? And these people are probably laughing after I leave. Yes, no? So it is very bad. And you can see simple acts that people do every day. They have tremendous consequences. But we do them And not even that we do them, we continue to do them. So the idea is that you have to focus on barriers. So this picture is trying to show that suddenly I've opened the door, but there is a wall in front of me. I can't go anywhere. I'm just stuck. And you always focus on ideals. So the definition of ideal is something that you can never ever achieve. So that means million years from today, I will still be striving for perfection. You can achieve objectives. Somebody says, oh, my objective is to make X, rupees every month. You may be able to get there. But that typically is not good, because once you get there, then somebody will ask what else you will do. Then what else you will do, what else will you do. So you have to understand at a higher level, focus on ideals. So that means this idea will focus on continuous improvement, not one-time improvement or two times improvement, or continuous. And then there is less emphasis on specifications and standards. Remember we talked about sometimes there are some quality gurus who will say, any country that use standards and specification is very, very low level. So these mostly for undeveloped countries. So it's like when Bill Gates started his company, Microsoft. Do you think there were any standards for Bill Gates? There's no software. There is nobody to tell this person what to do. And it was his job to develop the standards. And what is a good software, what is not a good software. Bill Gates, guys know, he learned computers in our university, in my university. And when he was in high school, he will sneak in, though he was not allowed because he's not a university student. So when we had computers, he will come and work in our lab. And then later on, his mother was the chair of the board of regents of Bill Gates. No problem, here is $100 million. You say, I need $500 million, or no problem, here is $500 million. So anytime we have a new building, Bill Gates will give money. So then Bill Gates' co-founder says, oh, I should give money too. So his name is Paul Allen. So Paul Allen was the co-founder of Microsoft. And then his father is a graduate in law of my university. So we just got 2 years ago a new law building. So we named it in honor of his father. So our computer science department is Bill and Melinda Gates, a school of computer science and engineering. So when Bill Gates was at Harvard, you can see that's the top university. So he called his mother and he says, Mom, I want to quit Harvard. He's only here. So like if your son calls you and says, Mom, I'm quitting university or school, what will you say?
Try to convince him.
Convince him to stay? Yeah. Stay, at least get an undergraduate degree, and you will, as a mother, you will say, at least you have a very long life ahead of you, just like your children. Yeah. And then you give a whole big speech. So then you will say, oh, I have friends. Maybe if my son is not listening to me, maybe he'll listen to my friends. So she went to other professors, her friends, and she said, oh, why don't you talk to my son? He's quitting the university. Tell him at least to get an undergraduate degree. So now today, our professors say, we are so glad we didn't talk to that kid and convince him not to complete his education. We philosophically say a good university cannot help creative people. We cannot help them. Our only hope is that we won't hurt them. And we can be very good at hurting people. How you think the professors hurt people?
Same pattern that you can't wants to follow?
Yeah, every professor has certain expertise, and expertise is based on, just like in physics, biology, any subject matter, certain assumptions. And then you say, this is how the world works, and this is my interpretation, right? But Bill Gates violated all the business rules. Every professor will tell him, oh, you can't compete with IBM, you cannot do this, you cannot price this way. So he violated all the rules. If he listened to the professors, he couldn't do what he wanted. Some of you maybe, if you want to study, who are the people who influenced our life or our in lot, like Einstein is like another person everybody knows. So most of the people feel that Einstein in 1900, best universities was Cambridge and Oxford that time. If he went to Cambridge and Oxford, he could not develop his theory of relativity, because those professors have an idea of how the universe works, and they will restrict him. And because he's away from these professors, he can think in a very different way. He can think and then come up with ideas that people will laugh at. You can Google it. So there is a letter to Einstein in year 2005. You've seen that? So where he wrote his thesis, and then he wanted a promotion that time to associate professor. So they said, to be associate professor, you need to have your PhD thesis approved. So the committee said that we are so sorry that your thesis is not any good. Your thesis isn't good. I know that you have done some work, and it is not physics, but it is art. So it is so different, and these people cannot evaluate that person. And now you can imagine the dean of that university, what he or she will be thinking, that what they did, right? So the idea, though Einstein is very smart in some way, but he's very bad in other ways. As a human being, you know Einstein's story? Little bit? Huh? Not in detail. So when Einstein was a student, his wife knew better physics than he did. She was smarter than him. Yeah, she was smarter than him. And she even taught him a lot of mathematics. And the first paper that they tried to co-write together had her name on it. But then in the end, when the paper was published, her name wasn't there. And so then the long story, then, the department told her, discrimination against women, it is everywhere in this world. So the professor tell, oh, your husband is doing PhD. In one family, one PhD is enough. Why did you need PhD? So they kicked her out. And then you can see there are consequences. For the last 15 years, I never talked to my father. So his children thought that he was so abusive to their mother. So he wanted to make sure that it's a series, 12 hours, and basic understanding. But you can see that even a person who could be very smart in physics is a very flawed person. Objectives of this presentation is how to go beyond what we do. How to go beyond. So rather than going through these slides, all of you have these slides. So what happened is when Professor Zadeh developed the idea of fuzzy thinking, fuzzy word is opposite of science. In science, we want to be very precise, not fuzzy. And so people will laugh at him. So old machine, like washing machine, even in India, so they will have washing machine, but an on and off. So they're like binary. So then Japanese learned about fuzzy thinking. This doesn't make sense. One of the load and I turn it, I'm consuming the whole cycle. So then I could say, oh, the button is, on means heavy load, medium, small load. But then the idea is now we continuous. So you put laundry, machine weighs it, then machine can readjust all the settings and then do the cleaning. So that shows that how simple thinking from binary thinking to fuzzy thinking had it. And people are so happy with their washing machine and with their vacuum cleaners. So then in AT&T, they try to develop microprocessors that will be based on multi-logic. They don't have a little bit of fuzzy logic. And all the work in future that will be done in artificial intelligence has to depend on fuzzy kind of thinking, multi-valued. Because our brain thinks in a very different way. The way brain works is, you think brain does integration?
Yes, sir.
It has to do it. But this integration is different than what we teach you, right? So it's a very different formula, a very different processor, how it will integrate. Do you think a dog does integration? A dog has to, like supposing, you have seen dogs, there's a frisbee, frisbee?
Yeah.
A small circle, you just throw it and dog will catch, right? How will dog catch the frisbee? That means if I throw it, and dog not only uses calculus, but uses stochastic differential equation. Dog has to observe every movement of the frisbee, has to know the velocity, has to know the acceleration, has to predict where it will fall, and then catch it. So you think it is just happening by magic? No. So dog is using all the very high-powered stochastic mathematics. Even an ant or a mosquito has the same idea. So it's not like by magic something happens, right? There has to be, as a scientist, you could take away what I'm saying and say somebody designed it to do them that way. But we are trying to a little bit more be scientific, so trying to understand why these things work, right? So that's the basic idea, that the kind of mathematics that we teach today, at least, it is very different than the way biological processes work. The way our biological system observes things, monitors them, learns from them, adapts them, improves them. So that is very, very different than the way. So I think we are pretty close to our second session. Yes, no? We can take a short break. So maybe before we take a break, I can stop here for a moment. I think all these slides, you can read it. And then there's a lot of mathematics, and then you can apply it to like a drill as a mechanical engineer in machining. Yesterday we talked about cancer, and we said binary thinking is not so good. You could apply it to network, right? All the transportation network, logistics, you can apply these ideas, like internet as a network, how to study reliability of the network. So you can apply these ideas. So everywhere you look at, you can apply these kinds of concepts. So these were a couple of pictures of the word binary means is that you have a underlying variable, you have one line, this side is a failure, this side is a success. Multiple would mean is you partition it into M categories, like 3 or 4 or 5. Like grade of a student, scale is from 0 to 100. I could say 90 plus 100 is A, 80 plus 90 is B, and so on. Or you could make it continuous. So that was the basic idea. So I can, a lot of this is you have to learn a lot. So here, this slide tries to show that there is a continuum. So the word is success or failure, it is fuzzy. So there is a degree of failure, or there is a degree of success. So if I say high values are better, so rather than saying this is my threshold, I could say this threshold would mean this side is 0 and this side is 1, right? But continuous would mean is, fuzzy would mean is there's a degree of membership. If I'm here, this is close to perfection, so my degree of membership of success is 1. If I'm here, my degree of membership of success is very small. That could be 0. So that's the basic idea. So then you can develop all kinds of stochastic models for this process. So let's take a 10-minute break and then we can continue. Thank you for listening.